Hi guys, welcome back to Nico Talks Hockey. Today I want to examine Seattle Kraken as the next team, up in my What's Next series, examining every team around the NHL, looking at how they were this past season, and then what's their next step they're going to take and how to kind of fix them if they need fixing for next season. So Seattle Kraken. I've got a kind of an in-depth look at them, just as I have for the other teams around the league I've already looked at. So the Seattle Kraken today, they're an interesting team to break down here because, there's a lot to fix. There's a lot that needs to be done to this team. A lot on ice and maybe some off ice as well, that we'll get into about what needs to happen in order to get this team to a more successful state. But let's start with looking at their record this season. So their record this season, 35, 41, and 6. That's good for 76 points, which is far off of playoffs, but it's also far off of really being a team that is looking to get a high draft pick. The record last season was only marginally better, 34, 35, and 13, so they had a lot more points in that overtime and shootout for 81 points, but still about 10 points off of a playoff spot there. We're gonna get to it. Spoiler alert: they're stuck in a bit of a no man's land right now. They're too good to tank, but they are also a good little bit away from being able to be a squarely in the playoff team or even a wild card team. So it's a place that no one wants to be in, but we'll dive into that in just a little bit. In terms of GM, their GM just changed, kind of. Their GM was Ron Francis. He moves up to president of hockey ops. And they get Jason Botterill, former Buffalo Sabres GM. They get him to go into that GM position full time. I don't love this move. Look, maybe giving Jason Botterill another shot. Maybe Buffalo's cursed. Maybe it's not all Botterill's fault what happened in Buffalo. I get it. But there were better options, I think, out there. There were some other assistant GMs out there that maybe could have gotten the nod here. And I would have liked Ron Francis to honestly get the boot. Mad respect to Ron Francis as a player. Unbelievable player, one of the best players ever, right? But I think he's shown here. I just want to take a moment to talk about Ron Francis and the Kraken's time here. I think Ron Francis has shown that he does not maybe have the capabilities to lead as a general manager. Maybe he's good in other capacities, other front office roles or what have you. But he's gotten a bit of a run here. And, as a GM, you have to have, maybe the main thing you have to have as GM is a plan. You have to have a plan that you're executing over a number of years. A lot of people say it's 5 years, so we'll go with 5 years. And what, they've been in for 4 years now, the Kraken? They've made the playoffs once. And they did make the second round in that 1 year they made the playoffs. But aside from that, and it was kind of like a paper tiger in that 1 year anyways. I think it's maybe convinced the front office there in Seattle that they're better than they actually are. It shouldn't have, because look, when the Kraken came in the league, I was all about them not copying Vegas's model of like, okay, we're just going to be really, really good right away and just be competitive right away and start competing for cups, because times changed and Vegas had more advantage to be good right away just because of how it was set up, the draft. When they picked their players from every team, it was a little bit more advantageous for Vegas than it was for Seattle. So I actually was totally on board with the idea of building the team up, being really bad at the start, but having the ability to just be bad from the start and not having to take away pieces because all the pieces are not there. So you take players that maybe you can really, I don't know, certain players from certain teams when they were first inducted into the league, but it's mostly a building from the draft, right? Building through the draft up. and kind of just starting from a blank slate, which I thought was really cool. I thought that's what they were doing. After the first year, I think they finished like bottom 3, and that's how they got, Matty Beniers. So we'll go into that now. I'll come back to the coach. We'll circle back to the coach. But their lineup here is perplexing because they got Matty Beniers, and he seemed like he's the number 1 center of the future, right? Well, he's definitely a top 6 center, I can tell you that. But it looks like maybe he's more suited for like a second line center role at this point, because he's definitely more of a defensive presence, and his offense isn't that, that earth-shattering. He's more of a 60, 70-point guy. Maybe his ceiling is an 80-point guy. So he's more suited for like your optimal second line center role. What are they missing? You're missing top talent. And by being this kind of middling team where you're just not good enough to make the playoffs truly and comfortably even, but also not good enough to get premier elite talent through the draft, Ron Francis's plan as GM has found him in this no man's land. So, yeah, I understand. I agree with Seattle's decision to get him out of that GM role, but to promote him, to give him almost more power. I don't know if I love it, but we'll see. I'm not going to just immediately just say it's the worst thing ever, but I'm just not the biggest fan. But here's to hoping Jason Botterill can do a better job as GM. Coach, they just hired Lane Lambert. And, to have the coach discussion, I think we need to go also into the stats discussion and where they're at. But it's just an all-encompassing discussion, I think, with Seattle. It's bad moves trying to be corrected with maybe more bad moves. It's a bit of a mess in Seattle, and it's not fun either, because I'm a big Seattle fan. They're probably my second favorite team in the whole league. So it's not like I'm just, dunking on them and saying, oh, they suck. I actually hope they get better. I really do. I would love to see this team compete and be a team that's worth everyone's time, because, I love Seattle as a place. I think that the colors and the jerseys are awesome. They're awesome to look at just visually. The fans, I think that, in the short time they've been there, they've shown these fans are actually pretty, they're pretty dedicated. They're pretty passionate. So I love to see that. But yeah, there's a lot to figure out. Let's look at the top 6. So you got Matty Beniers, your number 1 center. I do think he had a sophomore slump, but then his, so we'll see if he can rebound off of that. Now I'm remembering, did he have his 3rd season this past season? Not good enough. You bring in Capo Caco, who's definitely, I think, is going to have better time in Seattle than he's had in New York. And then Jared McCann. He's awesome. You've got Jaden Schwartz, who's a great goal scorer when he's healthy. Chandler Stevenson they bring in, and they signed like a 7-year deal. Don't know if that was the greatest plan, especially with the money and term. But again, it's these different conflicting ideas I think that front office may have, which is like, do we be competitive, or do we, try to build through the draft? And it looks like they've, at least last year, they were committing to be competitive now. That let's try and be competitive now. We'll retool along the way, but what is retooling? That there was nothing to retool in the first place, so it's really weird. And then Jordan Eberle, they didn't trade him at the deadline, which is great, because I trading another captain would have sent all the wrong time messages, so I'm glad they kept him at least. Their defense, I actually really like. I really like their defense on paper. Vince Dunn, Adam Larson's your top pair. Vince Dunn's the offense guy. Larson's the shutdown guy. Love it. And then your second line, although I'm not so happy with the term and the money they gave to Brandon Montour, you're stuck with it now. And honestly, you kind of needed it. Definitely needed it more than you needed Chandler Stevenson here. So Riker Evans, and then the young guy, pair with a more veteran guy and Brandon Montour. I kind of love it. I got no real qualms with the top 4 on the defense for the Seattle Kraken. And then in goal, their number one goalie, Joey Daccord, I'm a big fan of. I actually really like the deal they gave him. I think he can absolutely be a number one goalie. You're maybe, not even maybe, your unfortunately worst player on the roster is your backup goalie in Philip Grubauer. He's probably the worst goalie in the league this season. And I feel bad saying that because I never like dunking on players, but just statistically and the eye test, he had a real rough go this season. So I think it'll come back in the when I get to keys for success for next season, but losing Philip Grubauer is got to be one of those. Yeah, you look at the stats, right? You look at the stats, and nothing's good enough, and in fact, it's all bad. Goals for is middling at best, 16th, and it makes sense. This top six isn't good enough. Everyone should probably be moved back down a line. Like Beniers should be your second line center. Stevenson, although paid way too much, should probably be your third line center. Jared McCann, I like him in the top six. I even like him on the first line. That's okay. Kako should definitely be moved back one or two lines. But, maybe keep him on the top six because the Rangers never, optimally played him and his minutes. Eberle, sure, okay. And then Schwartz, maybe second line, but you want probably more in the third line. What are you missing? You're missing a whole first line. You're missing elite, premier top line talent. And I know that I don't have Shane Wright on here, but he's coming up slowly but surely. Hopefully he can turn to what was promised, but he's looking more like kind of maybe your second line center. And now you've got two second line centers. Maybe you can move right to the wing. I don't know. But it's pretty clear. You look at the goals against. Also, that's not good enough. That doesn't make any sense. It's pretty clear they need elite talent. And I thought that last year, I thought that the hire of Dan Bylsma as coach, I thought that was actually really smart. After, coaching back-to-back final appearances for their AHL team, the Firebirds, if I remember correctly, Coachella Valley Firebirds, yeah. They made the finals back-to-back years. They didn't win either of those years, but final appearances, that's great from Dan Bylsma. They upgrade him, get him to the NHL, back to the NHL, and I thought it was a great move because he knows how to coach the young players. Beniers, right. I love it, right? And then they have a really bad year. And I was like, okay, well, maybe, just ride it out. Ride it out for at least one more year, and then they fire him. I don't know if that was the greatest decision, but after looking at the stats, maybe it was needed. Maybe because you're on paper done Larson, Evans, and Montour, and then Beniers and Stevenson being more defense first kind of forwards, or at least 200-foot forwards, stands to reason that your defense should be a lot better than goals against 24th in the league. And then your power play percentage 23rd, so your offense isn't even good, right? Usually when your defense is bad, your offense should be better. And then the PK 21st in the league. All of it's not good enough. So, maybe they just saw enough of just one season and had to pull the trigger and fire Dan Bylsma. And you hire Lane Lambert, who's a defense first coach for sure. So maybe that they've cemented that that's their identity. That's what they want going forward. It's like more of the Nashville Predators kind of line of thinking and ideology. Minnesota Wild as well, where it's like, yeah, we're gonna have some people who are good at offense, but it's defense first. I'm okay with that. Just execute it, right? So now we're gonna take a look at the identity of the Kraken. I've already spoiled it, and taking a look at what they want to do next season and what they have to do in order to have a successful game plan for next season. Okay, so the identity is no man's land currently for the Seattle Kraken, right? They're, again, I'll say it again, they are just stuck in this position where they are not good enough to reach the playoffs. I really don't think that with this current roster, even with players they could add in free agency, I'm not too wowed. I don't know if any one or two players can bring them. That's available in free agency. Sure, you can make a trade, but then you're trading the futures, which you kind of really need right now. Yeah, they're stuck in no man's land because also there's some other teams out there I could see that are going to be better at tanking than them in their current position. Now, for next season, my opinion is that I think they should commit to a short-term tank. You've already got some really good young pieces. You've got Riker Evans, you've got Beniers, you've got Wright, you've got your goalie of the future in Decord. This doesn't have to be some long start from the beginning, rebuild. You just need one or two really elite pieces that can be part of your core going forward, right? So I think that can be McKenna. So tank for McKenna. You go into the keys for success, and one of them I have is trade the older players for younger bets or, picks. It doesn't have to, this rebuild doesn't have to go into 2028. It can be for like this 1 to 2 years. Tank for McKenna, tank for DuPont in 2027. Try to be really bad for just a short term, because you're also, one of the other keys to success I have is instilling a winning culture. You've got Lambert, fine, he's your guy. Instill a winning culture, but also be bad. It's really hard to do, but I think Seattle needs him to do that. Somehow figure that out. It's not impossible. Jared Bednar did the same for Colorado, where they were really bad. But also you don't lose a kind of culture, so that's why I prefer the short term. Don't do long term. Don't, commit to losing for a long period. But I think it's absolutely necessary they get some elite young options here, and I think that you have to do that through the draft. And they're really uniquely positioned to, because I don't know if a ton of teams will be trying to tank, even though McKenna is such a great prospect. I don't know if they're going to have a ton of competition. I don't know, like maybe only 3 other teams maybe I could think of that are going to really try and just gut it and go for McKenna here. So they have a really, really good shot here, I think, of landing a great cornerstone for their team for many years to come. Their number one key of success, obviously, is pick a direction. If they do not decide to rebuild, which I think would be absolutely a miss, but if they decide to continue going forward and try and build up what they already have, okay. At least they don't have to worry about losing a lot. Again, I think that's a mistake, but if they do decide to be competitive now, which is definitely an option for them in their heads, I could see front office saying like, no, there's too much losing, gotta go now. Okay, you get Lane Lambert, and you instill some real tight defensive structures to their, how they play. Shore up all that defense. Goals against, right? We saw goals against being very poor. Really shore that up. I expect the goals for to probably stay around the same, but if Beniers can really finally take off and definitely get some more points in production and get more defense as a team, sure, maybe this team could be a wild card spot in it's looking very poor Pacific Division. You're not going to have a ton of teams who are going to be really good in that division anyway. So if you can sneak into a wild card spot, okay. But I think that's what they've been trying to do for the past couple of years, and it's not worked out. So again, I think you need to get some top talent in the draft, and this year is a great year to start. But yeah, that's my breakdown on Seattle Kraken and where they're at currently, where I could see them in next season. Let me know what you think and what your opinions are on the Kraken and where they should head. But yeah, it's looking like a team that's just in no man's land and needs to pick a direction. And I think they need to bottom out for just a short term before that they really ascend, because they need some real help at the top here. But yeah, that's my take. Let me know what you think again, and it would mean the world to me if you would like and subscribe. This has been my take on the Seattle Kraken. I'll have more takes on different teams as we go forward. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.